Okay, this is what I put together today for this group, and I thought we'll see how it flows. Mother, Father, God, all that is, gatekeepers and angels, loving spirit guides and healers, earth's elements and elementals, may you graciously look our way. I call on you to be present and supportive of our group today. Let the air clear our mind and open us to the breath of life. Let the fire kindle our heart with warmth and generosity and acceptance. Let's see here. Let the water wash, cleanse, and clear and purify us, so that we can flow easily with the river of loving energy. This is our cue for our little flower essence bottles here. These have all 3 different kinds of flower essences in it. That are made combinations of different flower essences. One is the one for the day, and today is governed by Leo. One is an energy healer that I made originally for healers to have a supportive energy around them when they work with people. And the third one is the heart chakra, because Leo governs the heart. So that's in there. Cheers.
Cheers. To your help.
Let the earth give us a strong foundation for our love. That as we stand firmly on the earth of the Mother, we feel her love flowing through our feet, legs, and up our body. Let there be a connection between the earth beneath our feet, the fire of the sun, the clouds in the sky, and the air blowing freely. Let our hearts be open to receive your wisdom in its highest, truest, and purest form. And as my will, so mote it be. Now, English is not my native language, so I'm not an expert in making rhymes. But rhymes are kind of like a prayer on a laser beam. Nature flows in rhythms and in cycles. And if we let our words flow in rhythms and cycles, it's kind of like a reinforcement, like a laser beam. This is the original meaning of a spell. It was a prayer in a rhyme form. And then it got a bad reputation during the witch hunts, but really prayers in rhyme form, that's what it is. It contains power. It is our words have power, our intentions have power, our creative energy comes from within us. Yes, we are infused by nature, we're created by God. We've been we can conjure up the energies from outside and the help from outside, but without our intentions, nothing flows. Our intentions is the most powerful gift that we've been given. And we are relearning right now how to use those gifts, not to harm ourselves and to harm others, but to really actually help and support ours. And that's a training, it's a practicing thing, because we for many thousands of years, thousands of lifetimes, lots of generations, we have not been taught how to use those powers. There was a fear involved with all those powers, and the fear of control and being controlled, we lost the idea of how we can actually create our life. So these are all things now that we're going through, these changes in this time of revelation, is about waking up. It's about remembering who we truly are, where we came from, why we're actually going through this learning process on this unique planet that we're on. And Earth is a very unique planet according to the masters, because it's one of the very few where feelings and emotions are a natural part of the evolutionary process. Most planets do not have that. They have mind and they have creative things, but they do not involve feelings and emotions. And so that's why so many souls are gathering around this planet in physical form and in non-physical form, because we are kind of like at the last stages of the university lessons. We're evolving into the next higher layer, and everybody wants to be part of this and observe this and help and or be practicing. So we're in a very unique time of our time. Doesn't make it any easier, but it's definitely special, and we've definitely been here free will. Nobody came here because it was pushed. Everybody chose their parents, everybody chose this environment, everybody chose the unique circumstances to give us more insight, more clarity in something that we may actually continue that way or change. Unless it becomes conscious, we're becoming consciously aware of what we want to change. It's just kind of bubbling underneath the surface. And so sometimes we pick environments and circumstances that are don't feel very easy, but we're by nature very lazy beings, so unless we're gonna get pushed into a situation, we don't really want to look at it. So today's day, we'll talk about today's day. So what I learned over years, and I didn't grow up with this, but when we started a garden, and I have to admit I was a real city kid, garden stuff came out of the store, and but somebody had given me a book about gardening by the moon, and I thought, you don't have any idea, might as well just look it up and see what's in there. And this book was absolutely amazing, because it didn't just touch when to plant and when to harvest and what to do. It touched the entire background of the rhythms on this planet and how we are involved with how our body is involved in those cycles, and how we can read those things and learn those things, and so that we're going with the flow rather than against it. And that too has been lost in the last 100 years because of mass production and pesticides and whatnot all, and the pressure on producing at a certain time and a certain amount and all these kind of things. All those things were, when we are taking nature into consideration, none of those things are necessary. Anyway, so this lady in Austria wrote those books, and her books have been translated in every language there is, but she also made always a calendar, and I used to have those calendars, but of course she made them only in German. And then one day Jack complained that he couldn't read the darn thing, and so I started making them in English, and for our area here. And I learned a lot over the years while making those calendars and observing nature and how those rhythms really apply. And it's not just about voodoo stuff and predicting when it's going to rain and stuff like that, but the associations that the ancient ones had with nature. See, that was a natural calendar. They didn't read and write, but they could observe nature. The moon was something that was consistent in 28 rhythms. The stars behind the moon, the star systems behind the moon, were a consistency, were something to be observed. And over the thousands of years, people found associations of qualities, certain day qualities associated always with the same sign, with the moon in the same phase, with certain rhythms. And of course it's a long drawn out observation, but it holds true to this day, and it can be very helpful. So today is February 9th, and today happened to be a full moon. And everybody has all those associations with full moon, and some of them are actually true. The basic rhythms are the waxing and the waning moon. So the waxing moon is the moon from new moon to full moon, when the moon gets fuller. And the rule is that in that time, the physical body, animal and people, absorb energy, and earth gives energy. So the earth expands, expels, gives the energy, and we take in. And in the waning moon phase, it's the reverse. Earth takes in, and we give. We're more active in that time. We're more outgoing. We're easier to give things. The thing is, giving and taking is neutral. So in the waxing moon phase, if I harbor on something negative all the time, and I really hump on the same subject, or I watch too much TV with all the negativity stuff, we absorb that energy too. It's not It's not just somewhere else. We absorb everything that comes to us, and we need to pay attention to what we're absorbing in that time, because at the time of full moon, that energy gets let loose just like a waterfall. It just kind of gets, the gates are open, the floodgates are open, and this energy rushes out of our body, which leads to accidents, which leads to all sorts of emotional havoc, which leads to people not being able to pay attention, and stuff like that. Every police station, every hospital knows that. And on full moon, you have all sorts of stuff. The other thing that the body does at that time, it releases easier the blood. So any kind of injury bleeds heavier than on any other day. That was used in the old days for slaughtering. When they slaughtered the animals for the winter, they didn't want to feed through the winter. That's where the blood moon word came from. It didn't have anything to do with the color of the moon. It had to do with it on that last October or November full moon, when they slaughtered the animals that they for food during the winter. Instead of feeding them through the winter, they slaughtered them on the full moon because they would bleed out better, ergo better be better preserved. Okay, so a lot of the stuff that's coursing around is of course nonsense. It's just kind of like cute. I mean, the color of the moon has to do with the cloud cover. Period. So what the Celts named this moon the storm moon, because January, February, the transition from deep winter to more into springtime creates more storms, creates a lot of weather, is sometimes also called, and depending on the area, the further north you go, the more it's still very much wintry, so then they sometimes call it the wolf moon. That's the times when the animals are starting to have trouble getting through winter, when the people were starting to run out of food, when the loggers had to go into the forest and make more firewood. This is the time when you cut your wood. If you want new firewood for the next year, you're going into the forest until March before the sap rises again. And so they were exposed to the wilderness. It was this is the most difficult time of the year. Was always the most difficult time of the year, at least in our hemisphere. So governed by the moon, meaning that the moon is actually standing in front of the sign of Leo today. And Leo is a fire sign. By nature, the Leo days are warmer or feel warmer than other days. The warm weather or the warm feeling on the skin creates a craving for protein in our body. So on those days, we're likely to digest protein better than on any other day. Of course, it depends on what's all in it. That's another thing. But if people are watching their diets, there are certain days where we crave more carbs, and there are certain days where we look for salt, and there are certain days, that feel cooler and damp, and then we're looking to balance that naturally. And if somebody has trouble with those things, that's the days where you have to pay attention. Or where you also can support yourself. So because the other rule is that whatever you do positive on a day, that is governed by a certain associations, whatever you do positive is especially positive, whatever you do negative is especially negative. So Leo governs the heart, the back, the blood circulation. So if you have a weak heart, on heart days you want to be especially gentle and caring and loving with your heart. So avoid the discussions with whoever gets on your nerves. Don't get in a traffic jam. Do something nice and kind for your heart. Don't hurt yourself. On days, for example, and every sign is associated with certain body parts. So you have a sign that governs the knees and the ankles and stuff. And if you have really weak knees, don't go on a 40-mile hike that day. You're going to suffer more than on any other day due to those afflictions. So we can support ourselves a little bit by knowing those things. Other than that, Leo days aren't inclined to be good for anything. really. It doesn't really support any kind of certain activities or non-activities. Leo is the one sign where there is neither in the waning nor in the waxing moon much of an activity thing that is favored. And that's what I put in the calendars. I put the symbols in there and the explanations in there, what's favored on certain days. So, and Leo, the only thing that's actually favored is cutting your hair. Because it encourages growth.
It's so weird because I thought about cutting my hair this morning. You don't cut your own hair.
I'm just like, and that's the kind of thing. Since of course we live many times on this planet, we also have been exposed to that kind of knowledge very often, and so a lot of the things are subconsciously there. And we think it's kind of like a funny coincidence or something like that, but it isn't. It is actually the knowledge, the memory of knowledge that we've gained. Nothing gets ever lost. All the things we ever learned in any lifetime is still there. It's just not totally on the surface. But sometimes it is. Sometimes we learn, we respond to situation in an odd way, over the top. And we don't really know how to associate that with something. And it may or may not be something from our childhood that got kind of a wrong connection, subconscious connection, or it goes further back. I know, for example, that even as a small child, I could never have something around my neck, ever. No jammy, and even as a baby or something, I could not have anything around my neck. And there was no real reason for this, except for that I know that I got strangled in another lifetime. And some of those memories come up and says, "Oh, that's just fantasy. You must have seen that on TV, or you must have seen it in a movie, or you just read it in a book." Well, first of all, we're attracted to all the things that actually energetically attract us. So we don't randomly watch anything anyways. We don't randomly read any books anyways. And so what resonates with us is because we have memories there. Sometimes the memories are cleared, and sometimes they're not quite clear yet and need to be cleared. But, there's no accidents. There's no wasted time on this planet. There's nothing that isn't there for a reason. And when we understand that, then we look at every day a little different. It's not a wasted day. It's not a boring day. It's not something that, even if we feel we have a little bit of a low time in there, it's when our body, when our mind gathers itself again, makes connections that weren't there before. And a lot of those spiritual things are very subconscious. Our brain is actually not part of 90% of our learning curve on a spiritual level right now. The brain was created to help us survive in a physical form. So we wouldn't run into a fire anymore because we forgot that we burn now, or jump off a cliff because we forgot that we have gravity now, for going from a non-physical to a physical body. But the brain wasn't there for this last step of the spiritual evolutionary process that we're going through. That's where our body brain comes in, our solar plex, all the chakra connections, all those connections come in, and all the memories from before. And so is our brain helpful? Mostly not. And so it's to appease that little child with a temper tantrum. Why can't I have that car right now? I need it right now. It's kind of like the dolly in the store. And we need to distract our brain from getting into overdrive so that we can actually, faith and spirit, allow to bring the things in a divinely timely manner when it's really most suitable for us. And our brain usually is very short-sighted, doesn't see past the tip of our nose, can't see it. And so what we're practicing now is having the faith to allow the things to happen in a divine timing. And that takes practice. We're not very good at patience, any one of us. So the full moon, other than that, isn't much of a dramatic day, except for that we're going now into a phase of waxing, waning moon, meaning we're far more active. There's far more things that we like to do. This is a typical sign when everybody gets into, wants to do spring cleaning with the first sun ray out there. And so the waning moon is a good time for that. And then there is another phase coming next weekend, starting next Sunday, and that's called Mercury retrograde. It's one of, I'm not very much of an astrologer, but this is one of the signs that actually have a direct and a very demanding impact on how we experience life. And everybody was afraid of Mercury. Oh, nothing works out and everything goes wrong and everything falls apart. Mercury is bad. No, it's not. Mercury retrograde promotes, favors cleaning up things, finishing things that have been on the back burner for too long. So Mercury retrograde is the perfect time, 3 or 4 times a year, for cleaning your house, for getting your garage cleaned up, for making room, and for going through all the stuff that you didn't want to touch, to talk to the people that you've avoided talking to forever, to clearing up relationships that have been toxic and you've just been hanging on because didn't want to go there, and stuff like that. To start, and it is not favorable to start new things, total new projects, moving to a different state, starting a new job, closing a house, closing a contract, things like that are not favored during Mercury retrograde. And every realtor, if they would keep track of that, could tell you that.
How long does Mercury retrograde last?
This time it lasts till May 9th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's in the part of the calendar too. I put the Mercury retrograde dates in the front, and it's in the calendar also, always mentioned. So we get another one from June 17th to July 12th, and then another one from October 13th through November 3rd this year. It varies a little bit every year.
This one's especially long.
This one is kind of long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the 16th through the 9th, that's quite a bit of time. So make a list, What do I need to clean out? There's another thing that is actually very helpful.
May 9th or March 9th?
Or March 9th.
March 9th.
Oh.
Maybe 16th to March 9th. Did I say May?
Yeah.
You said May, yep.
No.
You sent us all into a panic.
And here's something
We're not
for the
that patient.
background. Here's something for the background that is encouraging to clean out our junk. Because the thing, when you make room in your physical environment, literally by cleaning out your drawers, by cleaning out your garage, you make room in your heart. Everything you throw out, everything you release, everything you let go of, you make room in here for something new and better. So it's a very spiritual journey, even though you don't have to think about it. All you do is go one drawer after another. Last year I thought I needed that. This year, why did I keep that? We move, we evolve, we change, and let go of the things. Things are just things. We're coming with nothing, we're going with nothing. And in between is just the hoarding of things which clutter our space that needs to have room for development and evolutionary process. So it is really a wonderful tool to get clarity. You have a subject that you can't find clarity over, all you do is turn around, clear out a drawer, and by the time you get out of that drawer, first of all, the drawer looks better, and you will find your answers in that process. Things show up, because if we don't harp on it consciously all the time, our spirit, our guides, our soul can actually talk to us and tell us where the energy should flow to flow real easy and real nice and real. And you know it when you have the answer, when it feels good. Everything else is an excuse, a brain excuse. If it doesn't feel good, it's not for you. And then it takes courage and guts to go with it. Because a lot of things don't feel good, but society says, and my neighbor says, and I always done it this way, and I should, oughta, gotta do, musta. And if it doesn't feel good, it's not for you. Simple. And it takes probably a lifetime to practice. Or 2 or 3 or something like that. So let's see here. We're 2:30, 2:40, something like that. Anyways, so everybody had a piece of paper, I hope. It has a little bit of a release written. And fire is a very cleansing agent. It is one of our elements that really helps us clear out things and let go of things. So I got a little thingy here. What's it called? Tweezer. Me and my English. And just fold up your pieces of paper and one by one. Hold the intention that's on that piece of paper and burn it. Release it into the ether, and then have faith and patience and courage to wait for the answers. And the answers will come. Usually I make a deal with my spirits. I say, look, my memory isn't very good. Could you please give me an answer within the next 24 or 48 hours? After that, I can't remember what I asked. And they comply. Most of the time, within the next 24 hours, I get my answers. If I'm willing to listen. Of course, that doesn't happen all the time. But if I'm really willing to listen, I'll get my answers. Go ahead. And if possible, don't try to drop the paper into the candle, because that'll. There you go. So this is where all those little ceremonies and habits and patterns come from. They're not anything mystical. They're not anything, that are occult or any of that. Those are just everything we can do to occupy our body, to keep our brain from running in circles. Is where our soul has actually room to put in a sentence, to give us some ideas, to give us a little bit of a hint of something. Our brain runs 100 miles an hour and is so loud that we usually can't hear what our soul is actually talking about. So any of those little things, any of those little rhythms, any of those little rituals that we can, habits that we're forming that are in a prayer form, having a certain time, having a certain 1, 2, 3 things that you do when it clears the mind. It's kind of like a mini meditation.
Don't wrap them too tightly. They burn better when they're not.
And
okay.
Saint Germain always said is that prayers are your request to the universe, that you're asking and you shall receive, asking for something. Meditations is the listening part, is the receiving part. But meditation doesn't have to be cross-legged till your back hurts and all these kind of things. You can meditate while you run through the forest. You can meditate while you sit at a stream and enjoy the gurgling of the water. Meditation is just quieting the brain, the mind so much, and feeling better in your body so that you open yourself up for the answers, basically. So meditation can, and as many people as are on this planet, as many ways of meditating are there. It doesn't have to be one way or another. Did you write one, Kelly?
Sorry.
No. Jack, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw you.
Okay. Okay. May all your prayers be answered. Actually, all requests that we send into the universe, the energy that we send out, we receive back. Without any kind of...
Wow.
We always get it back. And that's why it's so critical for us to understand what we're sending out and how we're feeling about it. It's about words, but it's also about the feelings behind it. Because we do like attracts like. Like attracts like. So if you send hatred and worry out, you're going to get hatred and worry back. Worry is, by the way, the highest form of negative creative energy there is out there. It's the most useless and wasted energy there is. And people are so proud of worrying all the time. And they don't have a clue how harmful and detrimental that is to their own body and their own mind. And it doesn't do any good for anyone. And I get mothers here, and they worry about their kids. And I says, really, if you really love your kids, that's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to send that destructive and negative energy. Don't worry, it doesn't do any good for them, Love them, send them love, and let them be. They have enough guides. They have the same amount of guides around them as you do. They're here for a reason. They've been here before. They chose you as the first grade teacher. Don't worry. It's a waste of energy. Anyways, anyone, any questions? Whatever comes up. Anyone come up with something that you want to ask? In general, before we go to the reading part. No? Did I drown you all out? You're too quiet, guys. Okay. Well, let's start with mini readings. The information for readings, this is something that everyone, the innate intuitionist, everyone is born with that. The first language on this planet was nonverbal. We all communicated on that level between the solar plexus. There were rules for that. Of course, you didn't interfere with somebody in private conversations and these, just like with regular things. You didn't read anybody else's letters. At the time, you didn't go into, jump into somebody else's communication on this particular level. And to this day, readings are done with permission. It is not okay to read, just randomly read other people just for curiosity purpose. First of all, it's time consuming, doesn't do any good for you, and it's just not very polite. So the permission given to tap into the energy form has to be given first. That's the first thing about a reading. You don't read anyone unless they ask for that, and with that asking, they open up for you to see what energies are there, and then it's the reader's job to interpret that in a way so that it is helpful. And that is like any other art and craft, it takes practice. And for me, I've been seeing things and knowing things and seeing auras and knowing about people when the words didn't match their expressions for as long as I can think. And of course, like every other child, I was told over and over and over and over that this was not okay to do, and you don't say something, and you don't lie to people, and how can you say that when you have memories from other lifetimes and things like that. So by the time I was a teenager, that was kind of, I was starting to hide this because it was very difficult to, because at times I didn't know that I was saying things that I wasn't supposed to know. You know, it's all the reality for me. So how should I not know that this kid in the school was going to move, or that kid, whatever, something. Well, we never told you that. How do you know? So the fear factor came in. And so I was starting to hide this. And then my grandmother took me to the side and told me all her stories about her communications with spirits and things, and how it helped her through the war, you know, get through the war and feel calm about her husband and her son, who were in other countries at the time during World War II. And the more you trust into those gifts, the more you trust into those feelings, the clearer those pictures were coming. And then at this time now, I don't judge what's coming out anymore, because I hand this over. I have an agreement that I am not given any information that is not, that the person doesn't want to hear or isn't ready to hear. No matter what. No matter whether it's important or not. If the person isn't ready to hear it, I don't want to know. And I don't want to say it. Because most of the time during readings, I have no recollection afterwards what was said. So I need to trust that what comes out is actually helpful. And that's the agreement I made. And the longer I've been doing this, the more, of course, I learned about all the mechanics and why we're here and what's all going on this universe. And so there's a lot of information and knowledge came through over the last 20, 30 years. I've been learning, so my vocabulary expanded. But what comes out during a reading is something my brain, my ego stays away from. and therefore I don't need to know any person. All I do is read the energy of that particular situation and trusted that what's coming out is actually helpful. And I haven't had too many people throwing rocks at me yet. So what I use, and that is a tool that Kelly introduced me to, is she said use some cards. People have an easier time listening to that when they can blame it on something. And cards are kind of like door openers, kind of like you switch your TV on. It opens up maybe another aspect too that your brain wasn't grasping right away. It's just kind of like a tool, like any other tool you use. You use a hammer to get a nail in, just by staring at it, you don't get it in there. So I use the cards as a tool to help with that. So what we're doing now is everybody thinks about or has already a question in mind. The more precise your question is, the more specific your question is, the more specific the answer will be. So, what's the best thing for me to do in 2020 is a little overwhelming for this group. That'll be getting way beyond what is answerable in this short amount of time. It is answerable, but the broader the question, the more all-inclusive and diffuse the answer will be. So the more precise your question, the more precise your answer that you get there. And we'll start with the ones that have done that before and enjoy this kind of thing. And so we're going to start with Debbie again. So, and then the other thing that happens in groups like this is it's a group of people that come together and everybody has their own very unique personal question, yet the answers that come out are for everyone, just as important for everyone in this group. There's no such thing as, well, I'm just going to go for a walk for half an hour because it's not interesting. Every answer given applies to anyone in this group. And that's just an experience that I made over the years, that it just seems to work out that way. So whatever answers come for everybody else, look at it how it applies to you too. And since we're doing mini readings here, we're gonna, whoever has a question, first of all, they ask the question, they shovel the cards while they hold the question in mind, and pull 3 individual cards. And then they say the question out loud, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to recognize what the answer is actually about. The rest of you wouldn't be. And then we'll see what comes out. That's the fun part. And then, of course, I do all those things. This is just the group. So this is just once a month we'll get together and people can be introduced to things like this and kind of get their questions answered if they have questions about that. And I really would like to do this, and what do you think about that, and whatnot. It's just a communication thing. Of course, I offer all those things
in the top,
wherever you want to. In personal things, personal readings, personal healings, the energy healing that I've learned from the spiritual healers in England, from my grandmother and stuff like that, and personal flower essence blends to really help us get clarity into our system that is convoluted and kind of clogged up with combinations assumptions that we made as kids that aren't logical, don't make sense, our subconscious knots that we can't really access because our adult mind says, well, that wasn't that tragic. How can that have such a tragic effect? But it had this effect on the child and stuff like that. So flower essences bring clarity to those through our chakras, through our system, allow us to bring. And once things get clear, then we change our response to certain things. Okay, question.
Okay, so I just had a 5-year anniversary of my retirement, which kind of ended that whole line of my life. And then I've been transitioning with the new move and pulling my life apart and still putting it back together. So my question is what direction should I go towards my future from this point, putting my life back together and to find my passion in another direction, since I'm not doing what I have done all my life. Is that too broad?
Well, let's see. There's a few things that come right up while you're saying this. And yes, the question has merit, because you're obviously at a breakthrough point, as a real turnaround point. Now, Saint Germain called this decade, this starting decade, the decade of clarity. Not just worldwide and economically and politically, but in our very personal lives. This is the most important decade during Revelation, where we gain clarity of who we are, why we're here, what we want. And it's not about what you want to do. The doing part is just an extra part. It's about what you want, who you want to be, how you want to feel. Okay, so what you make is a laundry list. Okay, how do I feel where I live? How do I feel about the people that surround me? How do I feel about the daily things that I do? Are there things that I'd rather not do? Are there things that I would like to add to? Is the town where I'm living really what captures my heart, or is it just because it's familiar? Make a distinction between, well, this is safe because this has always been that way, or is it really something I'm passionate about? Are you really passionate about where you were going with your healing, or is there a different aspect to the whole thing that is much more intriguing for you? And one thing that is more intriguing for you, rather than just putting hands on people, is actually talking to people, guiding people, teaching what you've been learning, putting your expertise to good use in groups. You have the personality to be in groups and actually have an impact, not by forcing other people to think the same way, but to present an idea in a way others can tolerate and accept. That is a gift not everybody has. I don't have it. Okay, you have this gift. So use the combination of all those energies for the benefit, for something that you're passionate about, because you truly are one that can bring a group together in a harmonious, positive way. No, really is. So, because the middle card in this here is the guardian, okay? The guardian of the energy, the guardian of the peace, the guardian of the harmony in a group. The guardian stands guard so that the ones inside can feel safe. You are the safety point in groups. Make sure you're passionate about it. It's not just something because everybody says you're supposed to be doing it. We're never putting all our energy into something that we're not passionate about. But then, in anything you're passionate about and put your input in, is going to take a turn for the better. Now, some things take longer than others, and in some of those groups are people that are challenging themselves a lot. They're fighting their old ideas. They're fighting how it always was, and they have a real tough time getting over their internal fears of things are changing and I need to change and I really don't want to change. And you have those people in those groups too, and they try to bully the group. Yet the guardian is the one that actually infuses the whole thing with a peaceful mind, so that they can get over their fears too. So the thing is not to succeed in whatever subject that group is working on. Your healer's job is to allow the people to be so at ease in that group that they actually can start trying to get over their own internal fears. However long that takes, and if they're too uncomfortable with it, they will leave the group and others will come in. That's not your job to keep everybody, to make to make this a you need therapy kind of thing. You know, you can't leave this group until you're better. But your input allows others to get over their fears, no matter what the subject is. The last card is the balance card with nature. You're balancing yourself by going out in nature, by going with your dogs, by going by using whatever excuse you have to get your feet on the ground, to walk barefoot, to stick your feet in the water, so the flow of energy is replenished, to internalize all the elements that are helpful to. So that this is your source of replenishment is nature. It's going out and touching trees and and not necessarily making another therapy run by doctoring whoever goes with you, but this is your time for yourself. So, and make it a good balance so that you feel balanced. And it's not always the same. It's kind of like so much in the group and so much in nature, and this changes and varies too according to times and rhythms and according to your needs in your body and in your soul. Make sense?
Yeah.
Very good. Shuffle.
I don't know that I have a question.
That is hard to answer.
I know. It's hard to ask too.
First thing that comes to your mind is usually what's top of it. Even though it doesn't seem like
Yeah, I guess.
something that you want to delve into.
Just pull 3 cards and see what's coming out. We'll just look for the best possible stuff to be important for you. Well, no wonder you don't have a real clear question, because the question is still in the belly. The question, the dream, is still hidden. Is still a little bit hidden away from the clear sight. It's kind of like a pregnancy. You know it's there, and you know it's growing. You know you haven't seen it quite, and you're very curious what it's going to look like when it comes out. It usually looks different from what you thought it would. So this is the dream. This is the dream state. The female goddess, the goddess emerges out of the dark. The dream is starting to develop. What this card means is that you've got yet a little bit to go for this dream to really manifest in its way, the way it starts. And then it goes from there. But it's not quite totally clear yet where this is all going. So the master on this side is saying, have patience. Have patience. We're guiding you. Ask for advice. It'll show up in its divine timing. And if it doesn't show up tomorrow, it's because it's not time yet. So which means your movement is still in the process. Your dream is still in the process. Give yourself permission to dream a little longer till it is actually ready to emerge. You don't want to have a cesarean, okay, for your dream, because that usually builds complications and makes it tricky and difficult. And yes, we're very familiar with difficulties. And it's very, for a lot of people, very comforting. Oh, I know difficulty. But it's not really what you need. This card talks about the same thing. Whatever you receive from the universe right now is the time to receive nourishment, to receive ideas, to read the books you always wanted to read, to talk to the people you know, and gain the information, gain the knowledge, gather your passion. Build your passion up. And only when your cup is full, you can give. You cannot give out of an empty cup, which is the Christian way of doing things. You give everything to the last drop, and only then you're a good person. You can't breathe. That's too bad. You give your last shirt. You give your last drop. You give everything you have. You deplete yourself. That's when you're a good person. And the universe says, your cup, your heart cup has to be full, and the overflow is what you can give in passion and love. And then what you give is loving. Before that, what you do is giving emptiness and depletion and worry, and everybody's afraid to ask anything because you're running on your last fuse. Okay, so this is the time where you still fill up. We're still a dream. So don't be impatient. It'll come in its divine timing. And then you know when it feels good.
Right.
And before that, it's too early. It's kind of like, baby come out. Nope, not today, not today. That baby, no, you can't. It has to grow to completion before it's really welcome.
Mm-hmm. My, probably a couple months, October, November time frame, I started thinking of a word that would kind of help me focus this year. And the word that came to me was settle. And what that meant to me was allowing all of the clutter, all of the noise to settle, and allowing the goal to rise, to know what kind of is my next step. Where am I going in that fits.
Well, use Mercury retrograde to clear out your physical environment, because that makes the room,
which we've done tremendous on.
Yeah.
Before we moved here.
A lot of people do that now, and it's incredible how much more you can do. You think you're all done, and by the time the next year comes around, the thing starts over, and it's even more and even more and even more. Yeah. And but the more room you make, the more your dream is gonna expand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good?
Yep. That makes perfect sense.
After you choose your cards, give the rest of them to her to hold on to.
Okay.
Just so they get passed around that way and absorbed.
What?
Mm-hmm.
What gets absorbed?
Them just holding the cards for their turn to come up.
Oh.
Oh, I have to talk to you.
I'm just sitting there going, like giving each other a look. Like,
Yeah, lots been going on.
Yeah, you don't even know.
Yeah, you don't even know. Well, you probably do, but.
No, because you haven't given me permission to know.
By the way, Saint-Germain talked about a new kind of stone crystals that are starting to be on the market, and they're called Super 7. And one of the gals was asking about a stone that would help her with her inspiration. She wants to write a new book, and just something to support her with the inspiration. And he talked about those Super 7 stones, and those are crystals formed together in stones that naturally come in together that they usually in other places don't come together with. And this is one of those stones, for example. So you can go online and get them, and you put them in order to connect with any kind of tool, spiritual tool. You put that under your bed pillow or next to your bed if it's fragile for at least 3 nights. And this connects the energies, kind of like tuning in, like the radio tuning. Okay, and that can be something that might be helpful for any kind of inspiration. I felt the energy of this stone was incredible. I mean, it was just mind blowing.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
3 cards and a question. Nope, doesn't matter. As long as we don't have to dig the couch out to get the cards back, I'm fine. There you go. Okay. What's the question?
Question is, well, the last couple of years, my life has been in total upheaval.
Welcome to the club.
I guess I'm wondering if I'm able to be more balanced this year and gear towards a more spirituality based year going within.
Are you planning to move?
Actually, we're thinking about it, yes.
Yes, you're moving. So here's how the cards go. These last few years felt like, trekking through deep snow, everything, the end of the line, everything is far out, far away, and hard to reach. It seemed like, but this time of misery, peace, of moving without direction, without a goal, was actually very important for you to tune into yourself.
grab this spot for a moment.
And since the whole universal theme over the next 10 years is clarity, we can actually really help ourselves by clearing things out. It's really one of the physical tools that everybody has available to themselves to help us in that next decade. Rather than to stumble over things and being hit in the head with something that we refuse to look at. Okay, question.
I don't know if I want to ask it or not, but I guess, and it may be too simple, or maybe it's something I don't know, but what is blocking me so much from some of the things, like we're doing this training in Qigong, and I know it's helpful, I know that it would be beneficial to engage it, but I struggle to become disciplined with it and do it every day.
Okay. There's a couple of blocks that make things like this, going into a new direction, sometimes difficult. First of all, any of those martial arts, any of those things, open us up to be more honest with ourselves, and that's difficult in itself. Okay. The other thing is that there is a block hidden somewhere in your childhood that you have forgotten and don't remember, where doing something for yourself, something different from the norm, was not safe. You were told it isn't safe to be different. It wasn't safe to say something that other people didn't understand. It wasn't safe for your parents. Your parents brought that idea to you that if you deviate from the average norm, what everybody else does in this, then it's not safe. That was their lineage issue that they brought along, that they grew up with, and they passed that on. So what you're hitting now is that lineage issue. It's not that you can't do it, and it's not that you logically not know that it's good for you, but there is a knot where that little child didn't feel safe from being different. One thing that you might want to combine this with, if you've heard about it, is EFT, tapping. That is one of the ways to go deeper and to unlock those knots that are so deeply buried and so subconscious and so judged that we can't overcome them just by willpower. Okay? It doesn't matter how long it takes, but the tapping has to go deeper. So, and Debbie just gave me some tapes by, what's her name? Margaret Lynch. And I've done a lot of tapping over the years, and it's all da 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 da, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And this Margaret Lynch has a way of going really to the core, without kind of getting you to tears and things like that, but getting to a real core. It was amazing for me how many things came up that I had forgotten for 50 years, 60 years, things that I have years missing, and things like that. And all of a sudden, bits and pieces and little things come up. This is where your block is. So then there's another block there that goes even earlier. So because you picked the parents for certain blocks, because they were already a block in another lifetime. And the picture that comes up with that is that you were part of a spiritual community at one time that practiced those things. But yet again, it wasn't safe to deviate from that group either. Even though they were on a spiritual level, but they had very strict regulations and rules, those were strict day orders and things like that. And it wasn't okay for that little child to be different.
So this is a long-standing thing that went from lifetime to lifetime, and now you are mature and you want to do this and you want to finally step over, but you've got to give yourself permission to get over this little child that still doesn't feel safe by doing something different. Make sense? Okay. So there's your support group. Okay. She's not gonna follow exactly in the same footsteps because she's coming from a different lineage, but the support is there for understanding that there's blocks that want to come up with that, and it may be not the only block, and there may be other things coming up, and that's why you're actually doing it. Okay, you're not starting something to be starting out perfect. You do this in order to grow, and that's the growth process, not just how to do something. And then there's the teacher. There is a teacher in your path that's going to show up at the right timing, that can, with their wisdom, guide you through that process. This is because this teacher has one advantage over every other teacher that you might run into. This person is absolutely not judgmental. And it sometimes feels like jelly. It's kind of like there's no wall, there's no resistance, there's nobody to fight, there's nobody to argue with. That teacher will not argue with you till you find your own truth. And it may be frustrating as heck, okay? But that is the person that allows you to go to that knot and actually let go without judgment. Sounds good? Get yourself those Margaret Lynch things.
She has a lot of stuff.
She has a lot of stuff on YouTube that's free,
And then she's
and you'll
offering
know
some
it when it
special
hits your
courses.
core.
She's offering some special
Yeah.
things online too.
You know it when it hits your core. Okay.
It's gonna be bye 'cause I've got to take a break.
Okay. We'll go to the readings now that don't want to be on tape. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Don't hesitate to ask over Facebook or email, and I'll see what I can answer.
Awesome.